We don't think of them that way. Okay, but when you look at that particular verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that everything that I've created is doing tasbih. So to be able to do tasbih, there are requirements. For a being to be able to glorify someone, there has to be choice. If there is no choice, then it's not really, if somebody was to put a gun to my forehead and say, okay, praise me or do my glorification, it's not really glorification. Generally, that's what the powers be are doing. By putting pressure on you, by saying either you're with us or you're against us, they're putting that sort of pressure that, glorify us, glorify how good we are, how good our democracy and our system and everything else is. So that, if it is not done by free will, if it's not done through choice, it's not really glorification. The second is the one that the person is glorifying, or the being that you're glorifying should also be out of some sort of emotions. Those emotions can be of love, it can be of respect. In order for a person to be able to respect someone, there also have to be choice. There also has to be awareness. So the third one, you can say that the awareness for all of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. If they're not able to be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the qualities or the sifat, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then how is it that they think of glorifying Him? And one example that came to my mind, because understanding and considering something holy, it kind of goes hand in hand. You have to understand the holiness of something to be able to glorify it. And one of the people, he was traveling and he was going through the border. We have Canadian and US border. So he was traveling, and in his car, they started to search and they found a CD. So the immigration officer asked him, like, what is this? He said, this is my holy book. It's Quran. So he put the CD in the CD player and the Quran started playing. And the immigration officer asked this Muslim, said, what is he saying? What is this? What is the Quran? What does it mean? And he goes, I don't know. So when he said, I don't know, the immigration officer said to him, how do you know then this is a holy book? Okay. If you don't understand it, how can you get to the point of saying that this is holy? Right? So in order for something to be glorified, the one that is glorifying, these are some of the conditions. And of course, it has to be alive. Right? So by looking at this particular verse, we see that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created is alive, it's conscious, it has choice, it is, it has some sort of emotions involved of love, of gratitude, of compassion. It's aware, aware meaning that it's aware of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's aware of the different other qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, it's alive. So when you think of it this way, then the whole universe, right? If you can't see the board, just shout out. Okay? So the whole universe is conscious. And don't worry about my spelling, because when I don't know how to spell something, I just go through a squiggly line. So the whole universe is conscious, and because it's conscious, there are different levels of consciousness that exists in the universe. The highest level of consciousness, that the ultimate or the supreme consciousness, is of Allah. Now, out of that supreme or ultimate or absolute or infinite consciousness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, there are different levels. So you have, you have Imam Masumin, alayhi salam, you have the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? May peace and blessings be upon him and his holy progeny. And if you want to consider, like, we have some of the hadiths that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created out of his light, So if you want to put light as consciousness, which they are quite compatible with, the only problem is you only have 1 hour to discuss this. And of course, there are going to be some questions that come up to you in your mind. And I'm just talking to my own self. I can't see you. I cannot see whether you understand it or not. So if you think about consciousness and light being very close, and being very close or the same, but in our understanding, we use a different word as consciousness, and we use a different word for light. Allah nuru samawati wal ardi is another particular verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the light of the heavens and the earth. So out of that, the ultimate supreme consciousness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, like the tradition is that He created the light of the Prophet and the Holy Five and I'm a Muslim from through His light. So He gave from His ultimate or absolute consciousness to I'm a Muslim of the degree which is the highest in the creations of Allah. And then afterwards you have, the angels, and then that too is, the particular hadith. And I'm assuming that I'm speaking to people who are familiar with some of the things that, some of the traditions that are quite famous or are, we've heard them quite a few times. So, I'm a Muslim, they said that, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, or I'm just going to use instead of light, I'm going to use the word consciousness. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this consciousness, out of this consciousness, we started to glorifying Him. And when we were glorifying Him, the angels, we taught them how to glorify. So the angels, and then you can say, from here you can have human beings, and then, and I'm using the word human beings very loosely. I'm not talking about the definition of a human being in the Darwinian sort of way of what a human being is. I'm looking at the definition of what a human being in the context of Islam is. Okay, and then you can say, the rest of the, instead of going into creations of Allah, instead of going into the rest of the levels, you can just say the rest of creations of Allah. Because the earth is also conscious. We have different verses in the Holy Quran that tells us that, the earth is actually storing the information. That there will come a time when it will actually review all of that information that the earth has stored. And then our hands and feet, they are also storage devices. They're also recording devices. They also are aware, and they have, the submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because on the day of judgment, they are going to bear witness against us. They're going to be able to speak, and then, or speak is our word of understanding, bear witness against us. So when you look at the universe, it is a conscious universe, and there's different levels of consciousness. The reason why I'm making this, and there's of course 1 hour we can just talk about this, is that because you guys had the topic of Sha'abaan and mysticism, which is a loaded sandwich in itself. Like, there's so many things in there. But inshallah, we'll see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with. So when you look at Sha'abaan would be a month. A month is time. And time is basically the quantity of motion. And also it is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the motion in the universe, or in multiverses, alameen. He created the motion in the universe, which when you try to quantify it, you come up with a scale, a measuring scale of time, which not necessarily is how time is. It's just based on the perception that you and I have. Right now, the perception of time is the earth revolving around the sun. So when it makes a full circle, say it's a day, or 24 hours, or the clock that we have, 60 seconds, 1 minute, 60 minutes. But if you look at it, it's basically we are quantifying motion of something that we've all agreed on. And that's why, daylight saving time, when it comes in, We can move the clocks 1 hour back, we can move the clocks 1 hour ahead. It's up to us, right? So if it was something as it is, it should not be based on, okay, whatever we feel like doing, we can do with it. So time is actually a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our perception of time is based on the quantification of motion. You can quantify, you can put a point of reference of something else, and then that would, you can have 28 hours, you can have, 30 hours. If you go on atomic sort of clocks, you can, this sort of thing will change. So anyways, not going into what time is, but understanding that time is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because it's a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it comes within that circle of yusabbihu lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ardi, that it is conscious. And because it is conscious, there's also different levels of consciousness. So therefore, there are going to be some months that are on a different level of consciousness. Okay. Then again, space as well. Space is also part of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and space is conscious as well. And in that space too, there's going to be different levels of consciousness. So, for example, like when you go to the Haram of Imam Hussain, is a space. But within that space, you have a different feeling. You feel uplifted, you feel cleansed, you feel closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you feel that with conviction, whatever you want to ask, you're going to receive, and that you feel humility and you feel that tremendous amount of love that you have for Imam Hussain and of his loved ones. You actually feel that within that sort of circle of the haram. Some people have even broader, like when you do the walk from Najaf to Karbala, as soon as a person will start walking, they'll start feeling that sort of energy emanating from the haram. And I'm sure some of you might have experienced that. So, and then the same, your room or the place where I am, this is also space, but there's a difference in all of these different spaces. There's a difference, and those are the different levels of consciousness that each space has. So when you understand that time is conscious and space is conscious, because they are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then out of that you're going to have different levels. So the month of Rajab or the month of Sha'abaan or the month of Ramadan, they are on different levels. Because if you don't think of it this way, I mean, what is the difference between this earth revolving around the sun in Rajab or in Sha'abaan or in Ramadan? There's no difference. The earth is still revolving around its own axle. It's revolving around the sun. There is no difference. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has identified these months to be different. Is because this conscious space and time that exists in Rajab, Sha'ban, and Ramadan are on a higher level and are more conducive for individuals who want to achieve a higher level of consciousness, which is becoming aware of themselves. Man arafa rabbahu faqad man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbah. The particular hadith of the Holy Prophet, that whoever knows himself or herself will know their Lord. So if a person wants to achieve the higher levels of consciousness or awareness, there are particular time and space, because they are on a higher level of consciousness, that when you enter into those months, they're more conducive and they can facilitate the environment in which you can achieve those higher states of consciousness, or the way we think about it is qurbatan ilallah, or we can achieve the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so I hope kind of made sense. It made sense to me, but
Maulana, I have a question.
Okay, that's okay.
Just before you rub away that first part, can you just briefly explain what you mean by that? Are you just saying that the creation of Allah has these qualities? For example,
Yes. So the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all of this. It's just these levels, they differ, right? So when let's say a peak is doing tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you guys understand about the whole creation doing tasbih, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when the peak is doing tasbih, it is doing it out of choice. There is love that the Aqiq has, because we know in the traditions it says that the Aqiq loves the Holy Prophet. The red Aqiq is associated with the Holy Prophet, the yellow one with Bibi Fatima. in, Dur Nazar, for example, is associated with Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. So there is that love that Aqiq has, which is expressing in doing salawat, or is expressing in doing asking for forgiveness for the one who is wearing it, or the ones who are the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and so on. So when you look at the Aqiq in this particular form, you're going to say that, okay, it's just an inanimate object. How can it be alive? But the definition of being alive of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the definition of being alive of ours is totally different. Our definition of being alive, there are six basically things or qualities that if something shows, then we consider it to be alive. And out of those six, all of the pandemic and all of this stuff that is happening with the virus, according to that, our definition of life, it doesn't even fit all six. It only fits three. Okay, something that is not alive by our definition has brought the whole world, 8 billion people, on their knees. Right? So there are verses in the Holy Quran that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants life, but you guys don't want it. Or the Holy Prophet, he said that you don't worry too much because these people are not alive. You cannot do tabligh in Qabristan, in the graveyard. So for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a heart that is not able to submit to the will or to the truth or to the logic or to the proofs is not alive. That person is not alive. Okay, so there are three levels of death that the Holy Prophet mentions. Again, life and death is not the topic here, but just to answer your question, yes. All of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, they are alive, they are conscious. And the new theoretical science is also proving that on the quantum level, um, you guys understand quantum theory okay, so at the level of atoms, and if you bring them down more, an atom is the one, the neutron, proton, and electrons, right? You guys have studied that. So if you bring lower than what exists as a particle, you can bring them down to like electrons or photons. So they have noticed that the quantum world, when you bring it down to the level of waves, behaves consciously. Okay, so this is an idea that we can have different other sessions, but I just wanted to bring this out for you to understand that how is it that Sha'abaan and the month of Ramadan are going to be, the time and space is going to differ than the rest of the months. Okay, so at the level of the three dimensions, we see that like this Aqiq is not moving. It's not speaking. I can't hear it. Just because I cannot hear it or I cannot see the movement of this Aqiq does not mean that it's not moving. Because if you go through the atoms, they're all vibrate. They're all vibrating in a particular frequency. And that particular frequency can be associated to even other things that are alive. Like the grass vibrates at 528 hertz. There are many things that are inanimate to us that are vibrating at 528 hertz. So if our definition was to be based on vibration, frequency, and energy, we will realize that everything is alive. But because of our skewed level of understanding with our own perception of materialism, random and somebody said something. Okay, randomness and sort of the scientific sort of paradigm where it's sort of reductionist sort of view that everything is matter and there's nothing else that is non-matter. We have come up with this sort of definition of being alive. Okay, but anyways, so if time and space is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which it is, then they have different levels, and because of those different levels, just like Aqiq is not at the same level of consciousness as you are, right? So if you see here, I've mentioned the different levels that exist. Okay, move forward. Should I erase it?
Yes, thank you so much. Like you explained it incredibly.
Okay, so alhamdulillah. All right, so now the word, the other thought that I had in my mind was of mysticism. Mysticism is a word we end up using very often, and especially the youth in the West. They are very much interested in spirituality, and if someone talks about spirituality, they give him more attention If someone talks about something else. So it is a natural inclination that we have. But this natural inclination that we have stems from this altered ego that we have, and that is manipulated by a lot of the sort of Western media, right? So the example of that is the Marvel universe, where we all want to be able to be like, you know, I don't know if all of us want to be like Hulk, but there are some of us who want to be like Hulk. There are some of us that want to be, like Thor. There are some of us that might like to be like DC, not DC as well, like Superman or Batman. So this sort of altered ego that all of us have, to manipulate that because we all sort of get inspired, and we aspire, or we are looking up to someone who has a sort of supernatural or superhuman powers, right? Who would not want to, like, for example, if I had those powers of teleportation, instead of doing it on Zoom, I can teleport myself to each one of your home, and we can sort of have this discussion, right? I won't need to use the tickets. I won't need to go through immigration. I won't have to, suffer for uh, whatever the flight is, 7.5 or 8 hours. So all of us have this sort of altered ego, right? We have this thing that we want, we look up to the ones that have it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this sort of inclination because Fitrat Allah allati fatara an-nas alayha. One of the particular verses says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given his consciousness, or his fitrat, or his nature, to all human beings. Okay? So we have a godly consciousness, we have a godly nature, depending on how you translate fitrat. So because we have a godly nature, of course, in the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is going to be those qualities of power, of knowledge, of having things to become subservient, and so forth. So every one of us have. Now, the reason why the interest ends up happening in the youths in the West is because they're programmed that way, and they think that mysticism is all about sort of acquiring superpowers, to be able to levitate, to be able to read people's minds, to be able to, teleport, and these sort of qualities, they kind of attract us. But mysticism is one type of mysticism. Is that what I talked about, and we're sort of inclined towards this, is just based on, I can use different words for us, just extraordinary states of being and action. And you can, not necessarily that's all it is, but so this is what I'm talking about. The second one is that if you were to want to get to that point of having these extraordinary states of being and action, you're going to have to let go, or just sort of become a monk, or there's different words, right? Like ascetic, or a mystic, Sufi, sadhu, right? And you guys know any other words for this? Right? Or a city. So we also have this word we end up using is an arif. Okay. So when you look at, first of all, this is not the whole of mysticism. Okay, this is just this part of doing it It's sort of like it's right, but it's incomplete. Okay. And other than I'll go through the explanation of what an arif is, so I'm not going to include that in there. But this sort of idea of letting go and becoming a monk or a ascetic or a sort of like a Sufi where you are just on top of a mountain or all you're doing is just, if you're a sadhu or if you're a siddhi, then all you're doing is just meditation, you're cut off from the world, you're living in a jungle, you're not taking a shower, your hair are all over the place, your beard is gone, and you're wearing sort of these torn clothes and wearing sort of tasbihs in your neck, and then having this sort of superficial, uh, um, superficial sort of image of yourself as someone who has left the world, who has left everything, who doesn't have a wife, who doesn't have children, who doesn't have a job, who's is not into entertainment, is not like so all of that imagery, it's basically superficial, and all of these ideologies of mysticism are actually wrong. This idea of worldview, this is wrong. We're not supposed to go on the mountains, and it's not about individuality, it's not about individual enlightenment, it's a lot more than that, right? But we are in a way sort of, we have become and we are taught to become very superficial. And I can give you a very good example of that, that you're also very superficial. A lot of the people that I have not spoken to, let's say I've spoken to Jaffer, but the other ones, or if some of you are there, I'm not sure. I haven't met you, but in the first 10 seconds of you seeing my face and the dress that I'm wearing, you made a judgment about me, right? And we do that all the time. And this judgment that you've made, your first impression is the lasting impression. We are told that, okay, whatever your first impression is going to be, the person is going to hold on to that impression for a very long time. So make sure that your first impression is powerful one, is a good one. So you got to dress for the occasion. You got to make your hair, you got to sort of beautify your outside and then present, because that's going to be the first impression, which is the lasting impression. And that makes us very superficial. And the reason why I said you are also the same way is because, look, I'm wearing an abaka, right? So you were listening to me for the last, I never know what time it is. So somebody keep a timer, okay? I don't want to go over an hour. You've been listening to me for about 30 minutes, okay? And I'm wearing an abaka. I've been introduced as a Maulana Sahib. Jafar, I'm not sure what praises he has given, but he ended up motivating all of you to spend 1 hour or more of your life, which is so precious. You're willing to give it to someone that, okay, so now just if you're ready, I'm going to prove it to you that you have your superficial glasses, okay? All right. Okay, ready? Okay. So here, now I don't have an avakaba on, and I'm gonna take the topi off as well. So do I look? Do you have the same feeling that you did before? I look like a regular person now, right? The title Maulana, where is Maulana? I'm still here, okay? It's not like I've gone anywhere. I'm still here. I'm talking to you for the last almost 40 minutes. It's me, right? But if I come over to your house, it's like nobody knows what I am. Like just a regular person off the street, right? But if I'm wearing that dress and then I have the topi on, especially if I have the amama on, I have a big beard, I got, let's say, some tasbihs going on, in my neck, and I've got like, you'll be like, oh, he's a mystic, Babaji, Sadhu, Siddhi. And then in our context, if you is like is an artist, just my dress and my look made me an arif, made me an enlightened person. If this is enlightenment, then I'm not enlightened anymore because I took my kabal. And on top of that, if I do this, right, and I needed some coffee, so Tim Hortons, I don't know if you know Canadian culture, but in Canadian culture, Tim Hortons is like part of it. So now you looking at me, and now let's say we are talking about mysticism and spirituality, and it's like, no, something is wrong, right? You feeling that something is wrong. The reason why you're feeling that something is wrong is because of that superficial glasses that you're wearing. We cannot go into the depth of mysticism, or we cannot go into the depth of consciousness or spirituality by having superficial goggles on. Because that is our first and the most biggest barrier that human beings have. Okay? And because of that barrier, they will think that in order for me to become a mystic, I need to let go. I need to go on top of a mountain and meditate. I need to let go of the things that are worldly things, quote unquote. But that's not the right ideology. Okay, so everything clear so far? I'm gonna erase it.
Yes, right.
Yes, 100%.
And if you guys are feeling too uncomfortable, I can again wear my bakaba. Is okay? This is okay for you now?
Yes, it's 100% fine.
All right, okay, fine. Just making sure, because I can still put it on. So it won't take me more than 2 minutes. Okay, so again, these topics, there's a lot of stuff in there, but I'm just going to Imam Ali alayhi salatu salam or Imam Masumin alayhi salam or the Holy Prophet. That idea of what we think of mysticism or mystics, this is not their idea. Okay, they have told us that Tariqud Dunya, or someone who just leaves everything or becomes a rahib or a sadhu or a monk, is not allowed. It's haram. Okay, so of course, once we understand that we're not supposed to be this way, then what is left for us is the example that the Holy Prophet has left for us, or Imam Masumina have left for us, for spirituality. Like we think of Imam Zainul Abidin and his days are coming too, so maybe we can talk about him. We think of him as he is an arif, he's a mystic, and everybody only looks at him with one angle, and there's the angle of dua. So we have Saifa Sajjadiya, and they're looking at from the angle of dua, and then our perception that he was always sort of weak, that he had because of Karbala, and he was always just crying, and that's all what we think about him, right? Or we think about the Masa'ib of Karbala with chains. Now, with this sort of this is just one, we can say, aspect of his life. Now, Imam Sajjad he bought 50,000 slaves and he freed them. He would buy a slave, keep him for a year or so, teach him, get him uplifted, right? Sort of do tarbiyah for him, and then he would make him go free. And this slave would go to different other communities or wherever the slave came from, and then he would teach those people. Right? You think about 200 million Shias across the world. I mean, now again, what is a Shia and what is not a Shia is not our discussion. But the ones who actually believe in Imamat and are inclined or love the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, considering in the last 14 years, they were all persecuted. They were martyred. They were killed. The families were killed. Genocides were done so that this idea doesn't go forward. Right? And the efforts of Imam Masumin, they were not given members. They were not given to be able to speak or have these thousands of people listening to them. Right? Imam Sajjad al-Assam worked in his business. He acquired that much money, which is a lot of money. It's not like little amount of money. To buy one slave, it was difficult in those times. Right? If you think it's about homes, that he bought homes, one person comes to the Imam and says, Imam, how are you? He said, it's very sad for me that you do not know how I am. There's not even 20 people who say salam to me in Medina. Right? So it's not like there was millions of dollars of homes coming from everywhere else. So he bought 50,000 slaves. He treated them well. He got them knowledge. He got them like spiritually uplifted. Then he would free them, and they would go to whichever area that they were from, and they would teach the people. Right? And Imam Sajjad al-Assam put the base for the house of Imam Bakr al-Assam. And then on that base, it was given to Imam Jafar Sadiq al-Assam, where there were 6,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 students. But it's Imam Sajjad who did it. Right? It was he had the wealth to buy those slaves. It wasn't like, okay, because you're Imam Sajjad, I'm going to give you this slave. No, he had to buy it. It was money involved. And 50,000 is not a small number. And imagine if you get 50,000 alims who have been taught from Imam Sajjad al-Assam, even for a year. Right? Some of our Sunni brothers, Imams, they end up saying that, the ones that were students of Imam Jafar Sadiq al-Assam, somebody asked him, how old are you? He said, I'm 2 years old. The guy's like, he was like, how can you be 2? He said, 2 years is the only amount of my life that actually is worth to say that I was alive. And that is the time when I was with Imam Jafar Sadiq al-Assam. The rest of my life is just waste. Imagine a slave being brought in the house of Imam Sajjad, and you have 50,000 of them. Think of an army of these alims, of these mystics that went into the communities and gave the people the truth. Even in today's resources, we cannot get 50,000 alims trained and put out into the communities to tell them the truth. With all of our resources, with millions of dollars or millions of tuman or millions of dirhams in our disposal, we cannot do that. He did it in his house. That's a mystic. So mysticism of Imam Masumin is very different. And our idea of mysticism is more closer to a Sufi or to a sadhu, to a monk, than what actually is. So because we're kind of coming up to the time that we've allotted, so I'm just going to tell you, mysticism or a mystic, and I'm not going to use the word mystic now. I'll just use the word arif so that we understand. Okay, so an arif is a person who is able to have the awareness of the blueprint of the Holy Prophet of Masumi, and through that his or her life is lived with that blueprint or awareness, and is able to combine opposites together to get at the highest level of consciousness and highest level of consciousness and reaches the stature or maqam of the representative of Allah. That's a big definition. So I'll read it again. I mean, if you haven't gotten it, I can say it again. Okay, so is a person who's able to have the awareness of the blueprint of Masumin alayhi salam, he lived his okay.
Oh, it started from the bottom and then it goes towards the arrows. And you said through this they live with that blueprint.
That's it. So you guys, somebody repeat that for me then.
So an Arif is a person who is able to have the awareness of the blueprint of the Holy Prophet and Masumin alayhi salam, and through this, their life is lived with that blueprint and is able to combine opposites together to get at the highest level of consciousness and reaches the stature or maqam of the representative of Allah.
That's a good definition.
Amazing definition.
This worked out well. So basically, it's kind of like the conclusion of what I've been talking about, right? Also, on top of that, what I meant by opposites is that, there's like 4 qualities that Imam Ali ﷺ is famous for. And just think of it, okay? So one is that he's a warrior. Okay. Second, he is a teacher. Third, he's a visionary. Right? Fourth, the healer. And you can actually add more too, right? But if you just think about these 4, a warrior is generally someone who is just, knows how to use a sword, is physically strong, exercises. All there is just the warrior just fights. It won't be a teacher. A teacher would be someone sort of, different than a warrior, right? Like this, you have to do that part. A visionary. You think of a visionary in your superficial goggles. Could you say this visionary is a warrior? Maybe somehow, like symbolically, you could use it, but you will not think of a visionary as a warrior in the battlefield, cutting necks of the people. Right? Is also a healer. So when you look at these 4 qualities, and these are only 4, I mean, Imam Ali combined, all of the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or all of the different levels that a person is able to achieve with the different roles that he had to play as a father, as a husband, as a brother, as a warrior, as a visionary, as a teacher, as a healer. Healer in the sense of, Imam Ali used to be able to heal not just the physical body, but also he was able to heal the spiritual, the emotional, the mental states of people, right? And then you find the same warrior who's cutting necks in the battlefield is going to cook for the orphans. You've heard all of these stories before. We had to cook for the orphans and feed them. He's a statesman. He has the state, which is the superpower of the world at that time, who had the amounts of gold and silver that was there. He is not comparable to any of the banks out there. With so much wealth, he's walking around with
Agha, Your mic sounds very different now. It's hard to hear.
Maybe it's the internet. Can you hear me better now?
No, it's still the same. Is that just for me, or is it for everyone else?
Yeah, it went like echoey.
Yeah, it's like you're really far away now. It's like
Oh.
you're if you have a. Oh wait, I think it got better.
Alright, so I think you might have been.
No, it's still bad.
No?
No.
What can we do?
Is there anything that changed?
No, it's just maybe my state has changed, your state. Our spirituality may be changed.
Oh, it's back. It's back. Oh my God,
Oh,
I brought it back.
all you had to do was just say it, and it's like obeys, right? Okay, so he's walking around with these shoes that are torn, right? And he's like mended those shoes, and here he is a statesman who has all of this money, but he's living a life which was less as a life was less than even some of the lowest class of people in his time. Right? Imam Ali had like a leather sort of skin of an animal, in which during the day the animals that were in their house would eat, and at night he would turn it over, and Bibi Fatima Imam Ali would sleep on that. His house is made of dirt. He has to go each day to work as a laborer, right, to provide for his family. He is digging wells because 25 years he's in his house and he's doing a lot of other stuff, and he's just digging wells so that the other people can benefit from it. Do we think of someone like that as a, as a, we think of that's a labor, that's a general labor. We don't think of that general labor to be a teacher, to be a visionary, to be a healer. Because of these superficial goggles, we are looking at separate. We're not looking at combination. So mystic, in my understanding, is someone who can combine all of these fours into one. And that is the difficult task. It's easier to go and cut off yourself from everybody and eat less, sleep less, and then don't interact with people. This is our superficial, like not smile, not look a person in the eye, always sort of weak, meek, can't stand against oppression. It's a very muttaqi parhezgar person. We need to combine these, that is more difficult. It's more difficult to combine these rather than taking one or two sort of directions of superficial image of an arif. Okay, so this so far okay. Okay, there was one more thing that I wanted to say, but Jafar, what time is it?
It's 27. You definitely have time because I want to hear more.
We have how much?
Yeah, you have like 10 minutes if that's okay with everyone else as well.
10 minutes. Okay, so there's also the concept of ibadat as well, okay, that I wanted to talk about, or dua. So let me just say very quickly, and I don't know if we still have time on Zoom meeting for questions, but let me say very quickly that all of the worship that you're going to do, or your duas, or your namaz in the month of Sha'abaan, or in Rajab, or in my Ramadan, the concept is that these worships, these du'as, these namazim facilitate the environment for a person to get pure and get to a state in which they can accomplish what they're here for on the face of this earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you a representative of His. Right? He has given you all of the potential, all of the tools to be able to get to that level of representation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So namaz in itself and du'as in it are just facilitating that time and space for the potential of a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come out into his words, into his actions, into his mind, into his emotions, into his character, into his or her sort of interactions with people, vision of this world, vision, worldview of this world. All of that is supposed to create the environment in which it can come up. It's not about just reading it and that's it. You know, you can do your tasbih, you can do your namaz Jafar Tayyar, you can read Dua Kumal, you can do all of that. This is just reading. If you don't understand the point of worship, you won't be able to benefit from it. It's not about just reading or just doing the checklist. It's about having that purity come out. It's about for the dua to actually get you pure enough so that this potential comes out or you can feel the existence of Allah. So it's like creating safe space for you. That where you have the safe space of Dua Kumel, you can enter into it, into that time and space, and get yourself pure, get yourself cleansed, get yourself feeling the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after that, you can do the rest of the tasks of your studies or of work or being a father, being a mother, being a brother, being a son. That this facilitation of time and space gives you the strength to be able to do that. And that's how you can combine living in this world and having to go through all of the roles that you have to play, or education, or earning sustenance, or relationships. You can combine them sort of together. You don't have to take one extreme or the other extreme. Okay? Okay? So inshallah, I mean, there's a lot more to say, but I don't know if you have questions, you can ask me. There was no right or wrong. I just wanted to put across a few points for you to start thinking, and then inshallah the afterthoughts will come, and you can combine, or you can think about the ideas I've given to you of the knowledge you already have. And then if there are other service that I can be of yours, let me know, then we can take it.
Yes, Jazakallah. Agha, thank you so much. That was an amazing session.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, any questions?
That was incredible. You really took it, rather than just giving us a list of amal, you kind of gave us like the energy, the feeling, kind of the almost like the philosophy behind it.
Alhamdulillah. The amal are important, but if we don't know why we're doing an action, right? It's not going to benefit us. It's just of course the benefit of just reading the Arabic of Dua Kumal or doing zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a certain lightness that we feel in our head or in our heart. But that's the very superficial, lower level of effect of dua. Right? Imam Sajjad al-Islam has in Sayfa Sajjadiyah given you ideology, he's given you fiqh, he's given you worldview, he's given you a system, he's given you a path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's given you how to be a brother, how to be a father, he's given to you everything that is in Islam in the du'as. Right? So just doing this sort of, just doing tasbih or just doing namaz without actually understanding that, look, my purpose is not just to do the checklist of this amal in Sha'abaan. This is not the reason why I'm doing it. I'm creating a safe space for the soul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be purified, to be cleansed, to have the strength that after this space, whatever other responsibilities I have, I should be able to use that strength. If you've done the amal of Sha'abaan and you're still stressed, or you're still depressed, or you still have anxiety, or you still have fear, and living your life that way, just like John Smith or Parvinder or any of the other last names you guys have in Ireland, what's the difference? If John Smith is worried about his life just the same way as you are, what's the difference? Same anxiety, same depression, same mental health issues.
You haven't done anything.
Right? So use the facilitation of these amal to and if you need to understand the meaning. And when you do it, it's not just about feeling light, but it's realizing it's giving you strength. Like لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, the fasting is so that maybe perhaps you can become strong. An arif is, that's it, like this is it, okay? An arif is powerful, is not weak. The power exists, like Imam Ali exists in the mind, heart, body, soul. And whatever is weakness is away from an arif. Whether the weakness is in the mind, in the heart, in the body, or in the soul, that person is not an arif. Okay? You guys need to become powerful so that you can help. How are you going to help the Imam if you have no strength? You think there were not enough people in the last 1200 years who read all of the Amal in Sha'abaan and Rajab and my Ramadan? They're just reading or doing that checklist. Has it brought the Imam for us? As a nation, we haven't come strong enough to stand against justice, to say what is right and wrong. What is that going to give you? There were Khawarij who can do a lot more worship than you and I in these months. What happened to them? There were people that were the Hafiz of Quran in the army of Yazid who killed Imam Hussein in the 6 months baby. They were reading namaz, they were doing all of it. They fasted. Okay? Chalo. I don't know how long your thing is supposed to be zoomed.
Unfortunately, our time is up, but we would definitely. That was amazing.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
then.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for investing your
Nice
1 hour or so.
Thank you for sacrificing your hour for us.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. All right then. If you guys get questions and stuff, you can write them down. Jafar, you can send it to me, or we can have another one.
Yes, inshallah. Yes,
Okay.
100%, inshallah.
Okay then. Hafiz.
Ya man Allah, Khudafis.
Hafiz.
Oh, guys, that was amazing.
Yeah. He goes behind the philosophy, behind everything. It's amazing. Oh, alhamdulillah.